So, welcome to Policing TV, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joined here by Tom Andrews, who's a lecturer in policing at Derby University, a regular contributor to Policing Insight, and a former police sergeant with Nottinghamshire Police, amongst many other things. And we'll come on to the uh, potentially the many other things in just a moment or two. So, Tom, welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here on Policing TV.
Thank you for having me,
Uh,
Bernard.
One of the, I could have gone on further on your introduction because you've got quite a CV and several strings to your bow, including the author of a number of books and including being the editor of the Police History Society. Uh, um, so hopefully I've got all that right. Feel free to correct me or modify or add to any of that.
Yeah, no,
Please.
that's all spot on. Yeah.
One of the things that I note that you've written, Tom, absolutely fascinating book. It appears, I haven't yet read it, and I really must do, but you are the author of The Greatest Policeman, a biography of Captain Athelstan Popkess, CBE, Order of St. John, Chief Constable of Nottingham City Police between 1930 and 1959. So Athelstan Popkess had 29 years as the Chief Constable of Nottingham City Police, an achievement in itself. But why did you argue that he might have been the greatest policeman? Tell us more.
I mean, firstly, with a name like that, how can you not be interested in somebody? And indeed, his name was kind of what first drew me to him. But yeah, I have an undergraduate degree in history. I had always wanted to be a police officer, so I joined the police, but kept that passion for history, and then kind of wanted to find out a bit more about the history of the force that I was working for and where it got to be where it was today. And the more I read about the force, the more I came across this name. And I thought, well, he keeps popping up. It's obviously a very memorable name. And so I started doing a bit more research into him. And the more I read, the more it kind of transpired that he had brought so many new innovations to policing over his time in charge of the police force. And I mean, as you say, 30 years is a long time to be in charge of a police force. He was only 37 when he was appointed, so it's not a record. Well, it's not a record by any means. There's chief constables that have served for far longer still, but it's not an age that's likely to be bested now with all the requirements to become a chief constable. Although if any PCCs are watching, then I would say I'm 38, so I mean I'd happily take a job. But no, so he's joined the police force as an outsider, which was quite influential for me as well. He came from military background and went straight in at chief constable. He came into the force at a time of sort of quite big change, 1930. We're looking at like immediately post-war, well, not immediately post-war, but sort of post World War One era of great mechanization and the automobile becoming much more common. And we see him landing in the force from his military background. And he brings a real passion for sort of motorized transport and things. He'd had a lot of responsibility around that in the army. And so he starts with Nottingham City Police in 1930. By 1931, he has bought the force some 39 police vehicles. Now, to put that in context, beforehand, the force had 3. The chief constable had 1 and the 2 divisional superintendents had 1 each. Popkess has gone out and bought 39 vehicles. And he writes about this, and his quote is, "What use is mobility without communication?" And so he wants to pair this. He doesn't want fire brigade style policing where he can dispatch a cop in their patrol car, go and deal with an issue, but then have to return to the station to provide any updates and get sent to another job. So he pairs this new kind of revolution in using police vehicles for patrol purposes with the introduction of wireless radios. Fairly new technology at the time. Off the top of my head, Marconi had only made his first transmission some 20 odd years before, so it was quite a fledgling technology. And long story short, he ultimately commissions a local ham radio operator to build radio sets for his police cars, fits them. To fit the radio at that time in the police car, they had to remove the entire front passenger seat. It took up the whole front passenger seat to fit this radio in. And their experiments also concluded that they had to transmission quality was much better if they transmitted and received by Morse code than if they used voice in like telegraphy instead of telephony. So there's these great pictures from Popkess's first sort of patrol cars that he introduced with a Morse code transmitter on the steering wheel for the drivers to use, entire front seat.
Yes, for the driver to use.
Yes, yep, for the driver to use. Well, they couldn't have a passenger; they'd have to take the seat out.
Oh, of course.
So
yes.
And yeah, so it turns out that he's got these 39 vehicles all fitted with two-way communication. At the time he's bringing that in 1931, the Met Police were the only other force that had any kind of vehicles equipped with radio transmission, and they only had 12. They were all allocated to the flying squad. They were all vans, and they could only receive. So here we are in Nottingham, a small provincial force at the time, only a few hundred officers, but yet they've got this fleet of 39 vehicles able to respond to emergencies.
It's worth pointing out that this is Nottingham City, so
yes.
It's not Nottinghamshire. There's been force amalgamation since, so this is very specifically the police force for the city of Nottingham. So. Remarkable, and of that initiative, or those two initiatives, vehicles and communication, not the only thing that you note within your book about Captain Athelstan Popkess.
Absolutely not. Yeah. So I think perhaps the thing that most surprised me when I was researching him. He's got these vehicles. He needs to get them to emergencies. Police cars, obviously, it's a very fledgling thing. And blue lights and sirens we now associate ubiquitously with police cars. They didn't have blue lights at the time. That came much, much later. But Popkess wanted to test how to expeditiously clear traffic and pedestrians from the route of his police car. So he tested various methods, concluding that a rising and falling note that he termed a siren was the best way of clearing traffic. So not only has he got these cars, but he's invented the police siren as well that we now see. At the same time, he is touring all of Europe to visit forensic laboratories for policing, because the police at the time, forensics was a fairly new thing, and police would have to go out to external providers to do any kind of basic forensic work. He said, let's bring that in-house. Let's use this technology and forensic science to catch offenders. If we can't catch them in the act, let's catch them afterwards. And so in 1934, he's opened the country's first police forensic laboratory at Nottingham City Police headquarters. And he's very canny because the university was right next door to the Nottingham City Police headquarters. So he's got the chemistry and the science students from over there to come and do the work for free, basically, and also upskill themselves. So as a lecturer, exploiting students is something I can always get behind. But so he's invented that. As the war has come on, he has been very prescient around the threat that Germany's going to pose. So he's introduced air raid precautions and things in Nottingham. Linked to his forensic science things, he was very passionate of linking that to the traffic matters. He has done testing around forensic science for taking blood samples from drivers who were under the influence, testing that against various sobriety tests. He's come up with a figure that people who had 80 micrograms of alcohol per 100 millilitres of blood was the general limit of intoxication, that they became incapable of performing sort of routine activities. And obviously any viewers and things who are well versed in police law and road traffic legislation will know that is still very much the limit in blood today. So that goes back to Popkess's research in 1947. And yeah, there's dozens of other fascinating things that he's brought into policing that we now take for granted. Yeah.
So I'm looking at the Mango Books website, the book that The Greatest Policeman, your book, published on the Blue Lamp Books imprint. and was available for sale on the Mango Books website. Sadly, it's showing as sold out. So it doesn't look as if I'm going to get an opportunity to get
It,
hold of
it is
a
on
copy and to
Amazon
read
and
it.
eBay. But
Okay, so it's also on Amazon and eBay. So that's the commendation then. I am going to go to one of those two, probably Amazon, after we've concluded, and order that book. It promises to be an absolutely fascinating read, and I'm going to encourage others to do so. You haven't, for example, mentioned his involvement in the invention of the burglar alarm, and there are other many others. And this must be a very substantial book actually to cover all that you describe. Absolutely fascinating, and I look forward to reading that and picking up with you on a number of matters in the coming months and beyond.
it's
Thank you
been a
very
pleasure,
much
Bernard.
indeed.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.